they have been tested in any.
Good morning. The time is now 10:40, and I would like to call this sitting to order. Well, a warm welcome to all. Nice seeing you again. As you would recall, the purpose of this meeting is to continue our inquiry into the operations of the National Flour Mills with specific reference to the agreement between NFM and the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries for the purchase of rice paddy from local farmers, and how that agreement has impacted on the ability of farmers to service their business communities. As you would recall, the role of our committee is firstly to examine the issues which arose based on NFM and other stakeholders' written and oral responses to the committee's questions, and secondly, to aid NFM in improving its operations, resulting in a more efficient and effective organization. This meeting is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's Youth Tube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can participate by sending comments relating to today's engagement with the National Flour Mills, the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, the National Rice Farmers Association, and the Agricultural Development Bank. You can send email to parl101@ttparliament.org, on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament, or on Twitter @ttparliament. So, again, I would like to welcome warmly all officials and representatives present, and I would be grateful if you could introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Nigel Romano, Chairman of NFM.
Kelvin Mahabir, CEO, NFM.
Winston Rudder, Chairman of ADB.
Shivan Ramnath, CEO, Agricultural Development Bank.
David Papanet, President of National Rice Farmers Association.
Inayat Hussain, Rice Farmer and PRO of CRAT.
Lydia Jacobs, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Marlene Andrews, Planning Officer, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Simone Titus, Chief Technical Officer, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Fazal Akalu, Rice Farmer.
Sati Jagmohan, Corporate Secretary, National Flour Mills.
Sunil Ricky, Corporate Manager, Credit, Agricultural Development Bank.
Thank you all. And before I ask committee members to introduce themselves, I'd just like to point out that we've had apologies from Mr. Leonce, Mr. Simonet, and Ms. Critchlow Coburn. Members.
Fazal Karim, member.
Lester Henry, Vice Chairman of this.
Antoine, member.
Good morning. Wade Mark, member.
Thank you. And just to remind everyone that I'd be grateful if you could put your phones on silent. And remember to turn on and off the microphone when speaking. Okay, so without further ado, let me invite the chairman to make some brief opening remarks and to pick up from where we left off on the last occasion.
Thank you, Chair. I really have nothing further to add. We responded to the questions asked and we submitted our answers, so over to you.
Mills. Coming back to the submissions of the National Flour Mills, I would like to have confirmed that the persons here today represent, in fact, 3 organizations: the National Rice Farmers Association, the Trinidad Island-wide Rice Growers Association, and the Caribbean Rice Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Is that so? Thank you. And let me just thank you very much for putting forward a very succinct position statement in a very non-political, very searching, and in a very concise way about relevant and important concerns. So we will want to hear from you. And what's becoming clear is that what started off as a simple inquiry into the operations of a company is now evolving into a somewhat deeper investigation about food security and perhaps the need for a strategic plan for national food safety. All right, so over to you, National Rice Farmers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, let me thank this committee for allowing the national rice community to make representation on behalf of the industry. It is indeed, and it has been indeed a very great and tremendous challenge for the national rice industry as it evolves over this period of time. As my case submission on behalf of the national rice farmers would indicate, there are a number of issues that would need to be looked at once the divestment process, which has already started with the National Flour Mills asset in its rice mill, to be successful. A number of commitments and things have to be done in order to create the platform. Hence, the submission would have indicated a number of these things and would have addressed a wider cross-section of issues that are interrelated to the survival of the rice industry as it stands. However, based on the fact that the original question asked and the original issue being looked at by this committee, I would have tried to, or made an attempt to be as relevant as necessary in relation to the core issues. From a neutral perspective, I must just give a little background of the National Rice Farmers Association as well. The National Rice Farmers Association specifically was not formed just to champion rice issues. As indicated in the case submission, it was formed specifically to deal with and focus on the divestment process that was already begun by National Flour Mills and the Ministry of Trade, and to create a platform for a sustainable and powerful transition of this particular state-owned asset into the hands of private sector, with the view of creating a sustainable rice industry support mechanism over time. This is the core mandate of the National Rice Farmers Association, and to date, the National Rice Farmers Association had been involved in a number of issues and meetings and so forth in relation to this divestment process. We would have been present when this initially would have begun. Just to give you a little bit of my background from this perspective, I am someone who has over 24 years experience in agriculture. I would have actually been involved coincidentally in the negotiation with national flour mills before this present negotiation with the present investors for that very rice mill. However, as someone with extensive experience from various areas, I stand in a position and sit in a position where I have an objective view from a neutral perspective, as well as I would see, you know, the perspective of all the rice farmers involved and so forth. Hence, I saw it fit, and through communication with your secretary, to have the national rice farmers also represented by the two other associations that had been long-standing, in order to give their perspective on things. So I will just pause for a while to give the opportunity through you, Mr. Chairman, when permission is granted, to Mr. Inayat Hussain and Mr. Fazal Akalu, who both represent two other associations.
Well, Mr. Hussain.
Thank you for having me. Right. Thank you for having me. I'm a rice farmer of 22 years. I've been planting rice. My institute is CRAT, Caribbean Rice Association in Trinidad and Tobago. It's a non-profit organization that used to have dealings with the ministry, right, on getting lands for rice farmers. Right? That was basically the main thing what CRAT is about. So far, CRAT is not very active anymore, right? Because most of the farmers are falling off because mainly because of late payments. What else could I say? That's about it. Thanks.
Mr. Akalu.
I must say thanks to the members of the JSC for having farmers come and have their views expressed. First, I'm a rice farmer for about 40 years now. I grew up with my parents into the rice industry, growing rice for their own local consumption, own private use, and from there, we continue to plant rice in a commercial way to sell rice and make up a livelihood. I would like to, well, everyone know that food security, there's no argument on that. We know every country need to have a certain amount of food to sustain themselves and their citizens. I would like to just introduce and talk about rice crop per se as a crop other than vegetable crops. Rice crop is of two different varieties that we can grow: irrigated and rain-fed. Now, because of climate changes, the rain-fed issue is kind of out. So if we need to plant rice in Trinidad, we need to have access of water and fields prepared in such a way that you could grow your rice. The time that a rice crop will take to mature from planting to harvest time is between 3.5 months to 4 months. And the yield is about 3,500 pounds to 4,000 pounds per acre. The cost of production for rice farming on a large scale is about $3,000 TT per acre. And the profits that you will gain from that is between $1,000 to $1,500 per acre, whereas in other crops you will gain much more than that. So hence the reason to be successful in rice production in Trinidad, you need to have large acreages to be productive and to earn an honest livelihood. So this is one of the reasons that farmers, rice farmers in particular, need the assistance from the state. Because to go on their own and to produce rice is very difficult in Trinidad. So that is the reason you find that the people who started this initiative, they had foreseen these issues, and they give the rice farmers a guaranteed market and a guaranteed price, which is very important, especially the guaranteed market, because when time to harvest rice, you cannot go to the market and sell that. It's a big amount of rice. So you have to have a mill prepared to take all these rice at one time and to do the drying and the facilities for it. And the guarantee market is so that the guarantee price too is that the farmer could foresee in the future what inputs he could have into that crop so that he could make a profit. So the next thing I would need is research and development. Research and development.
Mr. Akulu, before going in there, can you just indicate how many rice farmers we actually have in Trinidad and Tobago?
Right now, we actually have about 30 rice farmers. And between around 92, 93, 96, we had 6,000 farmers. Right? But because of problems in the industry that we will get to.
And of that 30, how many actually sell rice to the national flour mills?
Well, this last crop here, only about 3 farmers sold rice because of the flood we had. The whole rice industry was almost destroyed, wiped out clean. So we had only about 3 farmers in different areas that brought in a little rice. So national flour mills might have a better idea on that, how much rice came in.
Now, I know you want to get into research and development and some very technical things, and I don't want to necessarily cut you here, but we have a lot to cover today.
Yeah.
And I know Mr. Karim has some questions to us. So may I ask if you could just hold on that for a moment, and we will get back to it. I would like to open the floor now to members. Mr. Karim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me join with the chairman and all of us in welcoming all members who are present this morning for this meeting. Very important, as the chairman indicated. With respect to the whole issue of national food security, Mr. Akulu, since you have said that you have been involved in rice production for the last 40 years, going back to the days of your parents, you said there are about 30 rice farmers. I just want to get an idea. I have a few questions to start with you. Number one, in that 40-year period, how will you describe your most recent experience in terms of the support you would have gotten, in terms of the level of productivity, in terms of other things? I don't want to tell you. I want you to say to us, how will you describe your most recent experience in rice production?
Well, my experience recently in the rice industry is one of disaster. I am myself as a rice farmer, and I have 3 sons who are rice farmers. For the last 2 or 3 years, they have not been planting rice again. They came off of rice production because of many issues. And one of the most blatant excuses is late payment. I was going further to explain the rice crop, how it really actually works, to understand why late payments affect the industry.
But let me ask you before you continue, because I suspect what you're going to be talking about in terms of late payments, and which is really a main part of this inquiry.
Yeah.
You may refer to your relationship with any financial institution or with the national flour mills and so on, the Ministry of Agriculture. But the chairman would have indicated, the chairman of NFM, when he started last week, indicated that rice production in 1992 was about 21,200 tons. And that fell to 2,859 tons in 2013. And in 2018, it was 585 tons. So in your answer, I'd like to ask you to elaborate as to, in addition to what you had started to say in terms of the payment aspect, what are the factors, what are the reasons why we had such a dramatic decrease in the production of paddy and the purchase of rice paddy?
Yeah, well, the decrease was caused by many factors. One of the factors that caused the decrease in production, to my knowledge, was the introduction of something called the grading system. The grading system was where paddy was going to be graded in 4 different categories. And as I said before, the profit line in rice production is very small. And when you have the grading system introduced to farmers, and they cannot pay for the cost of production is costing more than what the return is. So they had to leave the industry because it wasn't making sense. That's one of the reasons why many small farmers left the industry. Because where initially you had a guarantee price of 89 cents a pound, they brought in a system where they was getting between $1 and 30 cents for a paddy. $1 first grade, and the 4th grade is 30 cents a pound. So you have 4 different categories. So when a farmer brings his rice and he get a 4th grade or a 3rd grade, it wasn't profitable. In fact, he was losing money on that.
Can I ask you with respect to the grading, whether you are satisfied with the grading process?
No, I was not satisfied.
And why is that?
Because when farmers carry their rice to national flour mills, grade 1, 2, 3, and 4 is dumped in the same heap, and the rice is processed in that way. So for minor little infringes, like you have a percentage of red rice or a percentage of chalky rice, you'll be degraded for that. So in that way, it wasn't profitable for most farmers to continue planting rice.
And what would you have said would have been necessary for you to have the best grade of rice to be sold and therefore paid at the highest rate?
Initially, national flour mills had the mandate to buy rice from farmers. They had a monopoly to bring rice into this country. And the mandate was to assist farmers in producing better grades of rice, better quality of rice, before the grading system was introduced. Together with the Ministry of Agriculture, they were supposed to assist in water development irrigation system. And
did they assist?
This never took place.
And what, did they help in any way? And if not, in your view, why not?
Well, in fact, the government of the day didn't see agriculture rice production as that important to have inputs into it. In fact, since the national flour mills acquired the rice mill at Castlefieldie, they didn't do much upgrading to the mill itself. And they did very little to assist farmers in upgrading their performance and grading to the level of the rice grades that they needed.
You said that there was need for assistance from the state. Could you elaborate on that? What kind of assistance would you require? And in that regard, could you tell us a little more about, because we have been advised that this is going to be a very dry season coming up here, with respect to the water resource that will be an important, a critical ingredient for rice production. So in what way would you have expected the state, or would you like the state to support the industry and to support the farmers?
One of the problems that we are having right now is of water supply. And I must say that the powers that be, they are not supporting rice farmers at all. Why I'm saying this is that the hydraulic roadway in Caroni was built to supply farmers with water in the Buccal area and lower along the Field City area, the surrounding areas. That way was taken over by WASA, and the tributary to carry the water to the farmers, there was a control there, and it was locked off completely.
Can you say how long that has happened so that we get a sense as to...
Yeah, that has happened about 10 years now. So they locked off the tributary to go to the farmers completely and allow the extra water to go over the weir to the swamp. And the Ministry of Agriculture have put something in place called assisting farmers by putting water pumps. So it had reached a stage now where the ministry used to man the pumps, fuel the pumps, and everything like that. Now they want the farmers to do that. So all these are extra on the farmers, and it is a very trying times.
Thanks. As you were talking about assistance and payments and financial aspects, I wondered if this might not be a timely moment to ask the ADB, because we have both the chairman and the chief executive officer of the ADB here, to perhaps share their perspective on this. Thanks.
May I be further advised specifically on what aspect of these arrangements?
I was actually going to let you speak as you saw fit on finance for farmers and food security and the role of the ADB.
Chairman, thank you very much. Well, the ADB is established as a state enterprise, a state corporation under Act number 3 of 1968, and the objects of the bank is to encourage and foster the development of agriculture and fisheries. And in this regard, what we do, we provide both credit and technical support. But the ADB as a bank is essentially a financial institution, and therefore the technical support with respect to rice varieties, agronomy, research and development, and incentives and what have you, beyond the supply of financial support, is primarily coming out of the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. And therefore the ADB is guided with rice production, as it is with all the other commodities that are produced in Trinidad and Tobago, by the overall policy and support that the ministry provides and directs. With respect to the rice farmers, since 2006, and in fact this was renewed by letter from the ministry in 2012, I think, we have been requested by the ministry to provide the required finance to the rice industry as farmers would request. And in this regard, we have been providing financial support to rice farmers for their productive purposes. And in terms of repayment, and this is, I guess, the relationship between ourselves and the NFM and the farmers, farmers do contract by way of a letter of assignment of proceedings that the national flour mills repay the loans as contracted with the Agricultural Development Bank through deductions made when they are being paid for their rice. So that there is a clear policy on the part of the Agricultural Development Bank to provide support to the rice farmers. We have, in fact, been doing so. And like all farmers, their particular rice project is assessed on the basis of its financial viability and what have you.
Thank you. Brigadier, you had some questions?
Yes, I'd like to have some follow-up questions to my colleague, Mr. Karim. And this is Mr. Akalu. Do you have access to, or do you own a private rice mill called Island Grain?
No, sir.
So you're not aware of and you're not involved in any proposal for the milling of rice?
That will be my brother.
And has he submitted a proposal for the milling of rice for the rice farmers?
So I would not do that.
So you would not do that?
No.
Okay.
Mark.
Yeah. Good morning, and thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just want to ask the chairman of the ADB, could you share with this committee how many rice farmers are clients of the ADB?
At the current time, I am advised that the records indicate 9 farmers are clients of the ADB.
When you were to make, how long have you been chairman?
I have been chairman of the ADB since November 2016.
When you look at the records of the ADB, what would have been the number of farmers accessing loans 10 years ago as compared to now? Do you have any idea?
I don't, but I'm sure my CEO would have an idea.
Thank you and good morning to all. The number of farmers we have accessing loans to the ADB is approximately 1,800 farmers.
1,800?
Farmers or rice farmers?
Farmers, total farmers. Rice farmers currently have 9.
But I was asking Mr. Rodden, could you share with this committee what it was about a few years ago, like 10 years, 5 years, between 5 and 10 years? Right now you have 9. Okay?
Yeah. From 2012 to now, the number of rice farmers has remained relatively stable. The farmers that we have today in 2019 are basically the same farmers who would have access to loans around 2012.
You want to share with us what, if any, is the default rate?
The default rate?
Default.
Well, the default rate with regards to the farmers, rice farmers, is approximately in the vicinity of almost close to over 75%. And that is related really to the late payments that we have been receiving from NFM. With regards to the total number of 9, we have 3 farmers who are basically up to date, 4 farmers who are basically about approximately 1 month in arrears, and 2. Because the bank's arrears figure is basically calculated once you miss 1 day's payment, it goes into arrears.
In the instance where farmers are unable to honor payments to the ADB due to delays in receiving payments for paddy sold to the NFM, does the ADB provide any kind of moratorium to the farmers?
Yeah, our facilities are available to the farmers. There are, for example, moratoriums, skip payments. You could refinance or reschedule your loans. Knowing the situation with regards to the late payments, the bank has kept in contact with the clients and basically tried to at least have discussions with them until the payments come in. We have made known to the farmers the facilities available, and we have had situations where at least 4 of the farmers have accessed the facilities that the bank has made available to them to help them to continue with the project with the intention of guiding project success down the line.
Now, apart from financial support, what other types of support does ADB provide to farmers?
The ADB concentrates on the financial support. We don't get into the technical aspect of it. That part of it really comes from the ministry. The ADB, however, upon part of our process in terms of monitoring is to pay visits to the clients. And based on that, we try to work with them with regards to the repayment aspect of it.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask the NFM, through you, Chairman, Mr. Roman. We keep receiving and securing information from the farmers, both in written correspondences and their public utterances, that the late payment for their paddy rice from the NFM seem to be a major contributing factor to the decline in the number of farmers in Trinidad and Tobago. Do you take any responsibility at all for this development as it relates to these allegations, I would say, where it's been alleged that it is because of late payments for their rice production, their paddy, and he has now combined that with the kind of grading system that NFM has put in place, dumping all 1, 2, 3, and 4 into one package. And therefore, that also contributed to the farmers and so on disappearing from rice production. Could you share with us, given your own experience as chairman, and from the files and records available, whether these things have any roots or any merit?
Thank you. Chairman, through you, there are a number of problems with the rice industry, late payment being one of them. The NFM is an agent for the Ministry of Agriculture. We buy the paddy from the farmers based on the arrangement with the Ministry of Agriculture. And we pay the farmers when the Ministry of Agriculture pays us. The NFM is not a financial institution. We produce food for the population. We don't provide credit to the farmers. We buy the rice, the paddy, based on the agreement with the Ministry of Agriculture. The grading system was implemented on behalf of the Ministry of Agriculture. So what we do is that we run the paddy through the laboratory and determine the grades, and based on those grades, we document so much grade 1, so much grade 2, so much grade 3, send the note to the Ministry of Agriculture, and then we have to pay the farmers once we get paid. Having said that, I believe that we could do a better job managing the flows. But as I said, there are other issues. The seed stock could be improved. The irrigation and drainage could be improved. The support and training in pest management and soil technology. These are all factors. So to highlight, because I believe that if you want to get into business, you need to create value. But you also need to create value at a cost that is less than the value you create, so that you can make a profit. And right now, we are supporting the farmers, the government that is, through the subsidies, $2.99 per kilo, $2.86 for grade 1, $2.86 for grade 2, and I'm not sure what the grade 3 is, because there are already 3 grades. And that's not sustainable. What is sustainable is working with the farmers to improve the quality of the seed stock, improve their management, and I expect that should come through the expertise at the Ministry of Agriculture, so that they get to a stage where they can be self-sufficient. So in our divestment proposal to the government, we made this very clear, that the farmers would be supported and helped to upgrade the quality of their produce, and while reducing the cost of production, and that the investor would invest in a parboiling facility so that the rice could be sold to a population that likes parboiled rice as opposed to brown rice or white rice. So that would be my response.
Gentlemen, there's one final question before. We have been told this morning that the NFM, in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture, had a very clear mandate to provide certain services to the farmers. One of the things I took down here was water management. I do not know if you can share with us whether that is a fact or that is the figment of somebody's imagination. Apart from the NFM buying paddy, milling it, at the Carsonfield mill, does the NFM have any other responsibilities to the farmers, the rice business in TNT, as far as you're aware?
No. As I said, we are a national flour mills. Our job, and under the arrangement with the Ministry of Agriculture, is to buy the paddy based on the grades and tell the ministry, these are the paddies, this is the amount owed to the farmers.
Mr. Chairman, you see, there appears to be some confusion because the farmers are saying one thing, you are saying something else. And I guess if I go to the ministry, I might get another story. So there's confusion, and hence the collapse of the farming industry in Trinidad and Tobago, because nobody apparently is taking responsibility for anything. So may I ask the president of the National Rice Farmers Association to elaborate or clear the air on this apparent confusion, or not confusion. It is clear to me that what Mr. Romano has said, that institution called NFM does not have any responsibility for these kinds of things that I'm talking about.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, through you, Mr. Mark, thank you for the opportunity to clear the air. There are indeed some issues that need to be elaborated upon. In reference to my case submission, which I would have submitted to the committee some time back. Now, basically, Mr. Romano actually is right. NFM's role in keeping this rice industry afloat and supported had specifically to do with the arrangement that existed between the ministry and NFM for payment. However, there have been a number of issues which I would have indicated here that falls directly in the purview of the Ministry of Agriculture as it relates to support services and a number of things that have directly affected the industry in a significant way, which would have played a very significant role in the resulting decline. As you would see, I would have done a little graph here in this submission showing the rapid decline of rice production over the past 5 years, which I actually would have gotten from NFM, who was very supportive in collecting my data for this case submission. I would have also communicated with past employees of the then rice unit and the large farms unit, which has now been disbanded by the present administration. I don't know under whose instruction. Basically, this unit was set up to create a very solid support base for the rice industry and a revitalization plan that already had been drafted and under implementation. I would show that's the cover of it here. This says the Trinidad and Tobago Rice Industry Development Plan 2014 to 2024 that details a very comprehensive, not just an outlook, but a plan of action that basically would have implementation of which would have begun. And as stated in the case submission, you would see that a lot of these services that were previously offered by the ministry are no longer in existence, based on the fact that there no longer exists a rice unit in the Ministry of Agriculture. This unit was specifically set up to create or support not just rice farming and production, but also the divestment process. I would have been over a 3-year period very intimately involved with the then directors and individuals involved in that unit from a technical perspective. My company would have had an agreement with them under the authorization of the PS. We would have made visits to Guyana, to the Guyana Rice Development Board on local rice-related issues. This industry has to be supported significantly by the Ministry of Agriculture, and so does the divestment process. I'm also in constant collaboration with, and have been in collaboration with, all of the prospective bidders for the existing mill. Just to clear up some concern, I was asked at that first initial meeting to exclude the Akalu family from it, based on the fact that there was a conflict of interest arising from the question that was asked earlier by one of the members of the committee. There is a lot that has to be gone into, and I'm giving a synopsis of a number of the issues, because we spinning around in the same place, you know, and we have not.
Mr. Papanet, yes, nice. I know Vice Chair Henry wants to ask something, but when I read your submissions, what I think a couple of points resonated and stood out. One was that, as you said, the large farms unit has since been disbanded, and as a result of that, the industry is now near to collapse. The second point that resonated was that we import US $14 billion a year.
No, wrong figure.
14 million
yeah.
per year, thank you. And that is a hemorrhaging of scarce foreign reserves.
Yes.
And then the other points that you were making was that there were concerns about the need for a written policy on rice. There was the acceleration of the divestment process for the rice mill, the desire for a strategic plan for national food safety, and then, as you again have reiterated, the need for support from the state for farming generally and for the rice sector in particular.
Yes.
Correct? Now, I'm going to come back to some of these points, but I don't want to hold back any longer on Vice Chair.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I really want to get the Ministry of Agriculture to have a say in this as well. But before that, Mr. Pampanet, what is your role in the whole thing, apart from what you described? Because you're not a rice farmer. What's yours?
Now, the rice farmers have asked me originally. I was engaged by the then director of the large farms unit under the company I represented, a Canadian company that had interest in purchasing the rice mill in 2016. And being someone who was actually planning my entrance into rice, because I have 24 years experience in commercial agriculture, I saw the need to act as a go-between person between the investors, national flour mills, and the rice farmers. I was asked to assume the position of the president of the National Rice Farmers Association because I had a very comprehensive and intimate understanding of all of the mechanisms and parts and components of this whole transition process into a private sector.
Okay, well, Mr. Akalu, I think, said there's only about 30 rice farmers in the country right now. So those are the people who you represent?
Yes, collectively, well, basically, even though Mr. Akalu is here and Mr. Inat Hussein is here as well, they are both also members of the National Rice Farmers Association. However, based on the fact that there is a broader perspective from a farmer's perspective, they were basically given the opportunity to represent a more broad-based outlook on rice that went outside of the divestment issue and focus on some of the production issues, and to give the committee a hands-on understanding and internal experiential understanding of what they would be experiencing. Although we are all aware, I would have submitted some of these issues inside of the key submission. So basically, that is what formed the platform for how today's representation has been structured.
I'd like to bring in the Ministry of Agriculture now to respond to some of these issues, because it seems like the rice industry has been in decline for a very long time. So I would like the Ministry of Agriculture to comment on that and some of the factors that were involved. Also, the price support that has been in place in terms of aiding the farmers at that above market price.
Chair, I will allow my Chief Technical Officer to talk about the price or whatever it is that was in debate. But what I can say is that the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries does provide support. It may not be the level of support that is required, but I know for a fact that the engineering division has a number of projects on the books relative to some of the concerns that would have been raised with respect to the whole irrigation system. So there is support, as we do supply to all the farmers in terms of incentives and in terms of the technical support I know from the engineering division. With respect to the other issues, I would just like to bring in the Chief Technical Officer who would be able to, who has better history on those other matters.
Good day, through you, Chair. And just following from what the Permanent Secretary has indicated, the ministry does do some sort of water management. I noticed that was mentioned before, and we do lend assistance in terms of providing pumps and access roads to all farmers, and rice farmers are not excluded. The ministry also provides free soil testing in case soil testing is required, and there is, and this is for all farmers, there is some degree of technical support that can be accessed through our plant clinics. So there are areas where farmers and members of the public can go to ministry staff with your, let us say, samples of leaves or so, and it can be diagnosed, and ministry would guide us to what treatment can be used. We realized after some time that sometimes asking farmers or members of the public to go to one particular site may at times be inconvenient. So we have also launched this online. So you can take a picture on your cell phone, upload it, and the ministry staff can diagnose it and guide us to how you proceed in treatment. So there is some technical support that is lent out to all farmers, inclusive of rice farmers.
When and why was the grading system implemented?
In discussions with my colleague, we will have to supply that information later.
I know Brigadier has some questions. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions of the farmers. On the last occasion, the NFM said that Trinidad doesn't have the capacity to provide enough rice paddy. Well, first, do you agree with that statement? And secondly, if you believe that Trinidad does in fact have the capacity to produce sufficient, safe, nutritious food, can you indicate the basis for that belief?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I believe, based on the exposure that I've had and the technical information that I've had the chance to peruse, that there is local capacity for the rice industry to, within the next 3 years, supply approximately 50% of local demand once a parboiling facility is made available, and some of the issues that presently exist are sorted out. Some of the issues that we are airing here. This can drastically increase to much more than that once appropriate technologies are implemented and a changed view of production is adopted by the farmers themselves as well. I have been to various countries and I've seen the levels of efficiencies that are way above the present local industry, so it is highly possible.
And on the last occasion, we also learned that NFM the mill is operating at 15% capacity. It buys rice from 6 out of the number of local farmers. So my question is, who then buys and mills the rice from the other farmers?
Yeah, I'd like to clear up one issue here first before I answer that question. This is a letter on the 24th of January from the rice farmers to the engineering division of the Ministry of Agriculture, asking for assistance with a pump and for the channels to be cleared to accommodate the water. And I spoke to the deputy director, and he told me that they have any equipment right now to clear any channels. And this, I can remember last time they cleared channels for farmers. And concerning the amount of acreage of land for rice production in this country, when the previous agriculture minister, Mr. Basan Bharat, was in office, he took the initiative to allocate lands for rice production. And he had members of the rice unit go around the country looking at allocating lands for rice production. And enough lands was allocated to produce more than 50% of the local consumption right now.
What I was also trying to find out is, besides NFM, is there another mill that rice farmers can go to?
Yeah, that farmer is a private mill. He only mills his own rice.
Available to the other farmers?
No, not at all.
We have here the rice farmers, we have Ministry of Agriculture, ADB. So I'm throwing out this question. What resources do farmers need, long-term and short-term, to revive the rice industry?
Brigadier, I'll be the first to answer that question, Mr. Chairman, through you. First of all, a collaborative effort is needed. The industry, the rice industry, cannot be revitalized by just the farmers increasing their production and investing more money in the rice industry based on a number of factors that would have been indicated. There are some key and critical areas for support and to create the transitionary platform in order for the industry to become self-sustaining. And when I say self-sustaining, I'm using the poultry industry as an example, as a viable example of self-sustenance, which is where we are hoping to have the rice industry end up in the next 5 to 6 years. However, in order to do that, this is just one issue, the ADB, sorting out the ADB matter and the NFM matter and so forth, as we have been speaking about here for the past 2 sessions. As well, there are four key pillars that could be viewed as critical to the resuscitation of the rice industry. One would be a reliable seed supply for planting material. The other one would be timely payments, right? Well, of course, the irrigation situation and engineering would have to be sorted out. And then the other one has to be a working and properly financed parboiling milling operation, right? Now, I just want to elaborate on on a couple of these areas as it relates to the seed unit part of it. Now, the Ministry of Agriculture under the past large farms unit were in process of developing a seed unit at El Carmen. This was a process that had already begun through an organization called FLA, and that organization basically would have been paid some 20-something thousand US for membership. They facilitate memberships from governments, from states, basically to support the development of rice and other particular commodities, target commodities. Now, this was a project that was already in existence. This project, the aim of this project was basically to create a local rice seed unit that would create reliable availability of seed and planting material to the rice industry.
Would that include things like our Moruga rice?
Yes, those things could have been further developed under that unit. That unit under the large farms unit was scrapped as well. The investment from the state would have gone down the drain. Now, this information is not information I would have acquired just by hearsay. I interacted, as I told you, personally with individuals from these units. My company had an agreement with them. I was actually engaged officially to assist them in a public-private partnership to help resuscitate the rice industry. And this is where this data would have come from, a very reliable source. Now, in order to be able to create this comprehensive resuscitation plan, this has to be looked at from all of these angles. If these issues aren't addressed, we'll be back to square one. The divestment in particular, all of the investors would have indicated to me that without a proper support system and policy from the government, from the existing government, they cannot move forward with the investment. Now, this is something I wouldn't call names here. I interacted with all of the investors over the period of time of the present divestment project. And this mechanism does not presently exist within the ministry, which could see us reaching a stalemate position and having the divestment process failed. A failed initiative, which already a very large sum of money would have already been expended on this process. This has to be a critical component in it. So just to give you a few ideas, there are much more things I can say, but I choose to stop there.
Well, I just want to make sure that Brigadier is able to get the answers he's looking for.
Could I get a response from Mr. Hossain and Mr. Akalu? What resources would the farmers need to revive the rice industry?
Well, immediately, we'll need some seed. As you're aware, we had a flood last October, right? During that flood, we lost most of our seed. Now, what farmers do now is we propagate seeds ourselves. So seed is a part of the crop growing, right? And when harvest comes around, we'll keep the best parts as a seed plot, right? And the extras we will sell to the mill. What happened was the flood took all of the seeds. So we have all the farmers without seeds. What little seed that we had from before, like a few bags of storage seed, farmers propagated it, right? So we will have seeds for the following crop. Getting seeds from Guyana is pretty hard right now. One of the farmers trying to access seeds from Guyana, but he's getting some problems with the licenses. So we don't think that will reach down into Trinidad in time for the following crop. So seed is definitely the main thing right now.
Any other resource that the farmers need from your opinion?
Well, apart from capital that we don't have, the late payments, we don't have any capital to really reinvest either. Farmers caught in a circle, right? It's a little cycle. Now, we need to invest before the crop, right? So it's 5 months before we should be selling rice, we need to invest. So we put out all our outputs and stuff. And after we sell the rice now, we should hope to get paid within a month to be able to reinvest in the second crop. If payment doesn't come, we need to find the money somewhere. So what farmers would do is they'll cut down on the acreage. They'll take away fertilizer because there's an extra input, right? And thus reducing yields, making a worse second crop, They'll maybe sell equipment to get some capital to put back into the fields. So when they sell equipment, they could work less land. And that's the cycle is being in. And we've been doing that for the last 6 years. So it's like my institution. CRAT is a conglomerate of farmers. It's just farmers come together, right, to acquire lands and produce rice. Now, most of them, they already went bankrupt. They're already out. We're dwindling we have about 6 active members. And in the last crop, how much? About only 3 planted because they're the only ones with some funds to keep going. And then the flood now came and took away all the seeds, everything that we had. So we in a really bad state at the moment because of it. And many of us may not even get the flood relief because the paperwork isn't in order for most of us. We planted lands that was planted by what originally leased to other farmers, right? But they gave up the lands. So, other farmers came in and we planted it. And well, the crops lost. So we don't know where we're going from here right now.
Mr. Akalu?
Yeah, excuse. After the floods that we had in October, the Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Clarence Rambert, the Honorable, had a tour in the area. And he promised rice farmers that we are going to get seed from Guyana. So we are hoping that he keeps his promise. But we have gotten seed from Guyana already, and the seeds were not at the quality that we expected. So that is the reason why the unit is so important, to produce our own seeds here. And it's a sad fact to know that, money was paid to this organization to come and propagate seed, and then it was dismantled. I can't really understand this kind of decisions that people in position takes. Not really looking at the industry, the security, the food security that we need in this country. It really is beyond my understanding.
And let me just shift the question to the National Flour Mills and the ADB. What resources do you believe the farmers need to revive the rice industry?
And Chairman, through you, I think that's a question for the rice farmers to answer. They're the businessmen. They're the farmers. They have to answer that. I am in the flour business, not the farming business.
Maybe I can answer some questions in a really simple way. The farmers need water to grow their rice. They need fertilizer to grow their rice. They need equipment to grow their rice. They need payment on time because the way the rice industry, the rice crop grows, after you harvest one crop, you have to immediately go and plant the next crop to avoid the dry season. So if you don't get paid in time, that is it. You cannot plant the next crop, and the farmers explain what he does to plant the next crop. So the payment on time and support from the ministry with seeds is very important. Now, we used to get, as farmers, we used to get water from a natural flow, from the hydraulic way, the hydraulic roadway in Kelly. Natural flow, we used to get water. Now, the ministry have to put pumps, put watchmen. I have a document here, right, from the Ministry of Agriculture, the agreement that farmers have to, when they get a pump. All fuel is supplied by the farmers. The farmers must provide a watchman. The farmers, they must make sure the pump is operating, the fuel pressure gauge, engine speed, fuel level, abnormal noise. You need an engineer to monitor the pump. And that is at the cost of the farmer. So we could have a system where farmers get water naturally, but because of no coordination between the Ministry of Agriculture and WASA, WASA closed up the system, and that was it.
Mr. Karam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll come back to some of the issues that Mr. Akalu raised, but let me start with Mr. Paponet. You have made reference in your contribution to I was asked and my company. Could you tell us who you were asked by and what is the name of your company?
Thank you again. Through you, Mr. Chairman. The large farms unit under the Ministry of Agriculture would have, at that point, I would have been representing a private international pharmaceutical company invested in biotechnology and agriculture in various countries through CARICOM and various other countries outside of CARICOM. And we would have had a partnership agreement with the Ministry of Agriculture under the then Large Farms Unit. And at that point, to answer the question I was asked by the then Director of the Large Farms Unit to consider having that company make an input as a private sector entity into the rice industry based on the need that he would have indicated through this plan. That this plan would have highlighted for a private investor to come in.
What year was that?
This would have been in 2016, right?
And the name of
between 2015 and 2016.
And the name of your company?
Massey Environmental Technologies is the name of my present company. Now, the thing is, at that point, I would have represented the international company, Health 2000, Inc., which had some significant interest in the rice industry. We would have written to the Minister of Agriculture and so forth to create a platform for dialogue to begin. There seemed to have been a desperate need then, as indicated by the then Director of the Large Farms Unit to us, that investment was critically needed for this parboiling unit, right? So basically from that point, being a farmer myself, I saw the need to continue as a pro bono representation to see this process to the end based on the fact.
Let me see if I get it correct. You were asked by the Large Farms Unit of the Ministry of Agriculture.
In collaboration with the farmers who were there. We actually had our first meeting, about 10 of us, including Mr. Akalu and Mr. Inat, who's
right,
here.
It started with the request from the Large Farms Unit of the Ministry of
Agriculture
for you to intervene,
yes,
and to oversee in a sense or assist or to work with the farmers and with respect to the divestment of the rice mill.
Of the rice mill.
Right. Now, tell me a little bit about this divestment. When did this start? I know there was a steering committee. Well, I want you to tell us, for the benefit of all of us who are here and those who are listening, what is that? Because you see, you made mention of the fact, and even NFM made mention of the fact last time, about a parboiling facility. But you might have a parboiling facility and no paddy to parboil.
Exactly.
So all of these things that we are talking about is what is required. The contingent investment, in my view, I would like to know, what is this contingent investment in terms of the feasibility of the sale of this rice mill in Carlsonfield to a potential investor who will not be sold a lemon because you may not be able to profitably engage in anything? And I want you to answer that because that is very critical, not only to us listening to the investment opportunities, but to the national community because this is a national asset and in terms of food security. And I'll come to Guyana after.
Good. So I'm very grateful that you asked that question because it brings us into the crux of the matter here now. Now, from where I sit, firstly on the side of the investment side, and then on the side of production, farming, and as I would have mentioned, somebody wanting to get into rice as well. I was planning this. and then someone who sees the critical need of national importance to be addressed. They're critical to this investment actually going anywhere, and this parboiling facility and this investment in this mill actually becoming operational. And this is not just my view, this is the view of all the investors I would have interacted with in this process and the previous one, because this point should be noted that this is not the first time the mill went up for bid. We were actually in the previous one, not this one, right? So basically, the first one would have failed. And from the information I would have gotten, reliable information, it would have failed for some of the same reasons. The investors see the farmer's ability to stably produce over a long period of time a critical component to the success of the investment.
Let me just ask you quickly, do you think based on what you have seen and what you have noticed and the experience of the past that this one will fail too?
I am getting some symptoms, and that is the reason why I decided to stay here. You know, I told these gentlemen, really asked me to stay on board based on this particular fact, because I really wanted to excuse myself from this, to not have my company be put in the limelight and so forth. But I see some significant potential for the failure of this particular divestment process. And this is not just hearsay. I interact with all of the investors, and I see things. I interact with everybody. Right? So basically, I even spoke to the minister on this issue via text message about 2 weeks ago, right? Who would have indicated to me the ministry's policy is to support the divestment and so forth. My view of that, sitting from where I sit, and not from just a passionate perspective, being someone whose livelihood is affected, although I could identify with it, from the perspective of investment, sustainability, and national food security, as well as from the perspective of national interest. Because I did sit in a state board before, so I understand from all different perspectives, being someone who was involved in policy, agricultural policy formation, and so forth. This divestment can fail very easily without the key components for support from the Ministry of Agriculture. All of the investors would have indicated such to me throughout this process, that there needs to be an ongoing support system. Now, we're not speaking about basically keeping the subsidy in existence for the next 100 years. We're speaking about support services specific to rice. Rice is not the same type of crop.
In terms of the support services to the rice production, paddy, and the mill, what kind of quantum of investment do you think will bring it to a stage where at least we could break even if a potential investor is there? In terms of the investment costs to support, and investment costs to upgrade the mill, the investment costs in terms of the parboiling facility, what do you think as a ballpark figure might be?
I will give you a ballpark figure based on an educated guess. Basically, in the vicinity of $30 to $40 million for a proper parboiling facility with the capacity to facilitate future expansion, processing capacities, and so forth. And as it relates to that, a support system and land allocation policy for a comparative land reserve for specifically keeping this production on stream. So they're tied into this investment is the actual component of the key persons which we view to be the farmers, right? In this component, if you do not have milled paddy to process after that large investment is made, problems will exist.
What do you think will be the ideal size of the amount of acreage that will be able to at least support the mill for production?
Looking at it from a realistic perspective, we are saying that about 6,000 acres allocated to rice production specifically has to be set aside with policies to back it up for change of use and that type of thing, so that people basically is not going to just migrate out of rice once they have 200 and 400 and 500 acres of land.
Are we close to the divestment now?
Based on what I'm seeing, how the divestment is turning out, there seems to be an existing stalemate. I sat and I listened in the back at the prior hearing. I didn't say anything because I wasn't called upon to speak. There seems to be an existing stalemate where the divestment process is concerned from different components. I'm a person who speaks to everybody who is involved, the critical people who are involved in this, and I see the potential for this to fail if the ministry doesn't step up to the game and put in place a structure and policies to solidly support the sustainability of this divestment.
You think we might reach a situation like we experienced in the recent past, where we don't have any raw material anymore to mill at Carlson Field? We might have the closure of the rice industry and the total importation of rice into this country.
We are very close to that. Right now, to you, Mr. Chairman, I would say we are very, very close to that point. This little graph I would have done in this thing would clearly indicate that.
Yeah.
You know,
I just want to ask one question more with respect to because we are dealing here as well in terms of the farmers' ability to service their business needs. I want to get from whoever, and I hope I will be able to get, and the listen committee will be able to hear. I am a rice farmer. I take my paddy to Carlson Field. The paddy has to be graded for me to get that slip to be sent to the NFM for payment. It goes then to the Ministry of Agriculture, who will give the NFM. I want to know, I take my paddy today, how long does it take to be graded? First question. Secondly, having gotten the slip to be sent to the NFM, how long does it take to move from Carlson Field to Port of Spain or Ryson Road to be processed? Thirdly, when it finishes there, how long does it take to go to the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that this is the amount of money we have to pay? Fourthly, how long does it take from the Ministry of Agriculture to give to the NFM the monies to pay? So it's a kind of cyclical situation. And maybe somebody might ask the question, why doesn't the Ministry of Agriculture themselves pay to the farmers directly based on the grading system? But I want to get those figures now so that we get a sense as to where is this delay from the day of the grading of the paddy to the slip being produced. I don't know how long it will take afterwards because I have to go to the lab. I've seen this facility in Guyana. As a matter of fact, when you talk about Guyana, Mr. Paponet, I'm very much aware of the GRDB and what they do in Guyana. So I have a sense of comparison. How long does it take to grade? How long does the slip take to move? When the slip goes there, how long does it take to go to the ministry? How long, having gone to the ministry, does it take for money to come to the NFM and then to be paid to the rice farmer?
Well, from a farmer's perspective, the same day that our rice is taken to the mill, the same day we get our grading slip and we get our voucher stating how much money we get for the rice. From there, the national farmers have to answer food.
Chairman, through you, the process of grading is instantaneous, as we heard before. As you deliver, you get the grade of your particular product because it's checked at that point in time. And the slips would then come to NFM from Carlson Field. Within a week, we try to have those slips to the Ministry of Agriculture. On average, over the last 2 years or so, I would say that it has taken approximately 6 months for payments to be made. In recent times, in particular in the last one, we actually paid for October to December paddy on the 23rd of January. So this one was in fact much faster.
Payment is from the Ministry of Agriculture.
It comes to us and then
so,
within a day or two of coming to us, we pay it out to
right,
farmers.
so it takes you a week to process your slips with the grading and then forward it to the Ministry of Agriculture. And it takes 6 months before you get the money from the Ministry of Agriculture?
Yes.
Could the Agriculture enlighten us as to what, because this is what is going to be, this is what has been said this morning so frequently. And it places the farmer in a very invidious position to service their business commitments.
Chair, through you, I would have explained on the last occasion that there was an anomaly in the 17, early 18 period which accounted for a significant delay. Paddy costs for September, October, and November, as far as my records show, we got those invoices in December. And by January, we were able to pay for those paddy costs. So I explained before there was an anomaly in the previous period, but generally, it should not take so long. And therefore, from the September, October, and November period, we were able to pay that in under a month.
Mr. Akalu and any of the, and maybe Mr. Hussein, Could you tell us, could you verify that the period of time to receive your monies have in fact reduced by about 3 months, PS?
Well, I will say from the time we received the invoice, which was December, and the Ministry of Finance is very responsive to incentives, all those things, so we do not have a long waiting period. So I can say from my experience that those invoices were paid very quickly.
Within what period of time?
Well, from December to January.
Yeah, how much weeks, if you could tell us? So I want the farmers to...
Roughly 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Could the farmers indicate that you have been seeing an improvement with respect to the rapidity with which you have been paid for your paddy?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to just take a minute to get some forms here. I went to National Flour Mills Milling Center at Castonfield Friday at 2:12 in the afternoon with these receipts that I have sold paddy on the 25th of April 2018, and my checks were not received down there as yet. I didn't receive any payment. On Friday, go on there, 2:12 p.m., and this, my money didn't reach down there as yet. So I have bills here to verify it. I have other bills from previously. Well, they said they had a problem in the beginning, but usually 8 months, 6 months for the last 5 years. And it's only recently, this last crop, that some farmers received money, I must say. But this happened because of this investigation that is going on, that farmers received some money. Other than that,
was it money for the flood or arising out of that flood, or was it monies that were actually better being paid now for the paddy you supplied? Compensation for the flood?
No compensation. No. That compensation we might get at next year.
Oh, no compensation for the flood so far?
No, not at all.
Yes,
what I'm saying is paddy that sold April last year. When I went Friday, I didn't receive any payment for that.
Yes, you wanted to respond?
Yes, Chair. I would have indicated that 17 to 18, there was the issue. So that the check for the period which we had for September, October, November, that is what would have been paid January, right? That is what would have been paid January.
Thank you, Pierre.
And those were the outstanding paddy bills that we would have had.
But I think the point that Mr. Karim was trying to highlight is that there's an ecosystem for farming. And there are many different parts and aspects to it. And what we are seeing is that there are some critical gaps in the benchmarks and the timelines. And I think if we are to talk about food security and rice farming in particular, we do need to work through this ecosystem and to see what we can do in terms of shoring up and closing those gaps. And what's quite clear is that we can't put it all on NFM, because NFM, no pun intended, does not operate in a silo. All right? But on the point of food security and rice production, on the last occasion we heard that farmers, that a lot of the production ends up as animal feed. How does the ministry and how do the farmers feel about that?
This is a very disheartening fact, because we do a lot to increase our quality on the seeds, right? We try to use the best seeds that we have accessible to us, right? We don't have a program where they develop any correct seeds for Trinidad climate or anything like that. But whatever is the best we have, you know, we try the best and we try to get the grade one. And as NFM stated previously, 60% of the rice is grade one that we sell to the mill. And it's a shame to be putting out all these extra effort just to go into animal feed.
But wouldn't having a bank of seeds be part of a national security plan? And wouldn't, my understanding is that the Moruga rice that we have is a very good rice. And one would have thought that we would have done research and development into Moruga rice, and we would have, as part of our national food policy, start banking that rice and looking to mill it and export it even.
Mr. Chairman, I chose to answer that question based on the fact that I've had intimate collaboration with the person who was directly in charge of the rice unit and in charge of that seed development program on the flour. Basically, the flour program was developed to have local varieties be worked on and enhanced. So basically, we would have ended up with our own local varieties of rice over time through some base cultivars and so forth. And basically, in order to have an industry like this and have it survive, we cannot develop it on the basis of imported seed material from other competing countries, by the way, because Guyana competes with with us for our own market.
Not only that, but by being reliant on, say, seeds supplied by Monsanto, you are actually putting yourself at risk because you need to have your own indigenous food stocks that are...
So basically, to top off this issue, this flour issue that's in existence, what would have happened, because flour is directly involved with governments, the farmers themselves would not be able to access any benefits from flour directly, only indirectly through the government and through some government unit that is specifically charged with the mandate of doing or spearheading this development. And this unit, basically, I would have toured these fields for myself at El Carmen. The lands was already prepared. The cultivars were being prepared to actually begin our own seed unit. All of these things collapsed after the rice unit was shut down. And basically, these are key ingredients to making sure that the rice industry is sustainable.
It also seems that we have missed an opportunity because, as you were talking about plant varieties, that's a form of intellectual property that we could have acquired and exploited as
agree.
Geographical indications for some of the top type of rice. P.S., I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Not at this time, Chair. But I am aware that there was a rice unit, but since my assumption of duty at the ministry, there has been no rice unit. I do not know much about the history of it, so I prefer not to really comment on that.
So now, Vice Chair.
Yes. Not to preempt the role of the chair, but I just like to inform members that the committee has agreed that the Minister of Finance will make an appearance. Sorry, Agriculture, sorry, my error. And yeah, but yeah, you can come too. Yes, but seriously, and so I just have two issues that I'd like to raise with Mr. Akalu. You said that in response to the Brigadier Antine's question about the rice milling proposal, that is something that you're aware of or submitted by your brother. Can you confirm or deny that? I mean, the island grain.
Yeah, my brother have a rice mill, island grain, but I am not aware of any proposal to the government. Previously, many years ago, through Nariva Farms, we had proposed we had a proposal for the mill, and that was it was not when I say we didn't get through that proposal, so I didn't take the initiative to do anything again. That will be up to my brother. I don't know.
So your brother might have submitted a proposal to process all locally grown rice, and you don't know about it.
I don't know about the proposal.
And in relation to the water issue that you raised before, is it this coordination between the ministry and WASA, you said, that caused you a problem? Or was there a problem of, an issue with pumping water out of national water courses without a license? What was that about?
Pumping water from the courses, you have to get a license. I have a license right now that I could pump water. But there was an agreement after the shutdown of the tributary to the farmers from the hydraulic way. After they shut down that, there was an agreement between the ministry and WASA that they will pump water from the Caroni River to the Waima River, and farmers will use their pumps on a private basis and pump water that they need to their fields. But that pump that was initially used to do that is not available anymore. But what I would like to do is that to see that the Ministry of Agriculture and WASA come together and get that tributary that leads to the farming sector initiated, and farmers to start getting water you don't have to, all you have to do is get one person to man the gates, and it's an automatic system where you just lock up or open, and no cost at all.
Member Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, based on what the National Rice Farmers Association President said earlier, the industry seemed to be in a state of rigor mortis. And I want to ask the president of this same association, you displayed a document a short while ago on rice production development for the period 2040 to 2024. Who is the author of that document?
Yes. To you, Mr. Chair. This is the document in reference. This is, again, this is the Trinidad and Tobago Rice Industry Development Plan. This document was done specifically by the Ministry of Agriculture under the Large Farms Unit in collaboration with the rice farmers of Trinidad and Tobago. It was a document that was done, taking into consideration collective contribution to the development of this plan to move the industry forward.
Madam, may I now direct this to the Permanent Secretary? In light of the fact that the Ministry of Agriculture has developed a plan and a policy must guide a plan, so you have a policy for rice production, which is manifested in this plan, 2040 to 2024. But we are being told, and you have to verify this, and if you can verify it, tell us what is the reason for it. We have been advised and informed that the rice unit for the large farmers, which would have also been engaged in the development of seeds for the rice farmers, research in that area, has been closed down, has been shut down, has been discontinued. Could you clear or clarify for this committee whether this is factual or is that an allegation?
Chair, as I indicated, I do not have that history, but maybe the Chief Technical Officer, who has been in the ministry much longer than I have been, she may be able to clear some of that.
Through you, Chair, my knowledge is that we did in fact have a commercial large farms unit, and at this point in time, no such unit exists.
Seeing you're the Chief Technical Officer, is that?
Yeah.
You want to share this? Would you like to share this committee? What will? Well, first of all, let me ask: are you aware of the reasons advanced by your ministry for the closure of this unit? Are you aware of any rationale for it?
Mr. Mark, I understand that the Minister of Agriculture will be coming, and perhaps he will be able to better explain the history and the policy of the ministry at this stage. I'm wondering, Mr. Papanet, the document that you've been showing us and referring to, if you could make a copy of it available to us for our information and records.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will through your secretary, who I constantly collaborate with, Mr. Brian Caesar, via email, so you would have it available.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, may I continue, please? There are a number of questions I have here, but as you rightly said, maybe the civil servants may not be in a position to answer these questions, and we have to wait on the policymaker to do so.
Mr. Karim has one more, so if you... And Brigadier also has a question. Well, Mr. Mark, while you gather your thoughts, Mr.
Sure,
Karam?
okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to get a response from the stakeholders who are here. And the question is very specific. What is the projected outlook for this year's rice crop? Considering all these factors that you would have spoken about this morning and the very dry season that we're expecting after the floods of last year. So what is this projected outlook for the rice crop, this year's rice crop? And the second part is, what can we as consumers expect? And if I could hear it from as many of the representations of the persons who are here, I'd be very happy, including the Ministry of Agriculture, NFM. I know you're not into rice production, but you sell rice. So if you could give us a sense as to that. And the rice farmers who are here.
Yeah, on a rice farmer's perspective, the amount of rice that planted this crop will just be a certain amount of seed that we need. So we wouldn't be able to sell any of that rice. We have to hold that rice to plant for the other crop. So I don't think national farmers will be receiving any rice for this crop. They will be receiving rice in about 10 months' time. When we harvest these seeds, and we wait for the beginning of the rainy season to plant back these seeds. It will be in about November, December.
So almost for the rest of the year?
Yeah.
Okay. And any others would like to, any of the other farmers groups and the Ministry of Agriculture?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I would say in response to that question that there is a definite sign here that we are on the brink of the total collapse of the rice industry. It's evident based on the evidence given. So basically, the rice industry, as indicated by Mr. Akalu, is already significantly affected by this. The lack of proper planting material for this new crop, which to an extent isn't even possible without a direct intervention from probably the Ministry of Agriculture for the expedited importation from probably Guyana or some other place. It is not possible for even the mill to operate and mill any rice for the first half of this year, which is terrible. So all of the evidence is there. We are on the brink of the total collapse of a rice industry if proper intervention isn't had.
So on that information we received, could the NFM give us a comment, and based on the fact that you may not see any local production for the next, well, almost for the rest of the year, what does the implication for us as consumers, what the NFM intends to do? I mean, I know it's an open market, people could import. Do you have any plans based on this information? And if you can tell us what you have in mind, what will that additional cost could be?
Chairman, through you, again, our focus is food and whatever.
Well, rice is a food staple, and
this is the reason why we went out in 2017 to find an investor who knew the rice industry. And I think we found that investor, and we're in the process of negotiating with that, or the team that was charged with negotiating the investment based on that process. So for me, what needs to happen is that there needs to be a clear policy decision as to, do we want to have a rice industry in Trinidad? That's the first question.
Excellent.
And if the answer is yes, then what follows is that you need to provide the support in terms of the technical support, in terms of development of the seeds and having the strain of seed necessary to produce a quality product.
Chairman, but given the information we just heard, does it mean that NFM may see a potential market increase, or you see an opportunity to import more rice on the basis of this shortage?
Well, I mean, I don't know if there's an opportunity to import more rice. The point is that there was very little in 2018, and therefore we imported to meet the needs of the local market. Very few people, I mean, I am maybe one of the few people who will enjoy brown rice, given my dietary preferences. But most people like the high-calorie, low-nutrient products. That's not me. But that's the market.
But now that we might have no production locally, what will be your response? Sorry.
Well, the situation is that traditionally in Trinidad and Tobago, you have a series of importers of parboiled rice, which is the preferred type of product that is consumed. And I think that will continue. Unfortunately, prices for rice varies based on climatic changes that are taking place in the large producing countries. So, for example, Brazil, Guyana, etc., as they get impacted, they would alter the price. It would go up or down based on actual yields that they're getting at that point in time. So that, I think, as the chairman indicated, Mr. Romano indicated earlier, the bottom line would be for the divestment and also for the future, because they are both intertwined, in that the divestment is part of a continuing industry. In other words, it doesn't make sense to divest something and then shut down the industry, because then there's nothing to run through the mills and the new parboiling facility. Unless, if that were to happen, then it means that that parboiling facility will have to depend on totally imported paddy.
And in your view, finally, what can consumers expect, in your view?
I think there would be supply. I can't say much about pricing because early in the year, and while we are affected this year by a very dry season, I don't know what the conditions are in some of the other producing countries. So I can't really make any pronouncements on that.
We're coming towards the end, but before I invite closing submissions, I just want to allow one more question.
Good afternoon again. It would appear from the discussions that the future of the rice industry hinges on the establishment of a parboiling facility with the rice mill. My question is, what time frame do we have for the completion of the divestment and the establishment of this parboiling facility? Otherwise, we are just doing animal feed. Otherwise, you are just doing animal feed. What is the time frame for the eventual establishment of the parboiling facility at the rice mill?
Before Mr. Mohabi or anybody answers that question, I'll just make my short piece. For me, that time frame is highly dependent on the ministry's desire to establish a rice unit. Without it, there is a no-go on the investment. I happen to know this. And that time frame now is very significantly hinged on the ministry's ability to mobilize and to create the platform for making the commitments necessary to make sure that this divestment process is successful. If that doesn't happen, I'm afraid that the divestment process will fail. So the time frame can be infinitum. It would be, basically we would not get there. This would not be a completed process.
Chair, it's unfortunate that the Ministry of Finance is not here because those negotiations are resting with that agency at this time. So to speak to an issue that is under the purview of another ministry, I would be unable to do that.
We're very close to 12:30, but I would like to just give Mr. Romano, Mr. Pampanet, and Ms. Jacobs an opportunity to make closing submissions. Starting with you, Mr. Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I have to emphasize that rice is not core to NFM, and therefore when we initiated the second attempt to divest, we were very clear that the local industry needed assistance technical and managerial assistance to the farmers to help them to up their game. And we had two objectives in mind. One, a much more efficient and sustainable rice industry, given the guys good feed, good seed, the irrigation and whatnot, to allow them to produce better quality with better yields and a seed that was suited to our environment. And the second and very important thing was somebody who knew the rice business, who would invest in the parboiling facility. That's where we are, and we need to bring that to closure. So, I mean, and the other thing I said before, we are prepared also, understanding that we are not a financial institution, to work with the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that the time period between submission of invoices and payment to farmers is as short as possible. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me the privilege of making closing remarks. To continue from where Mr. Romano left off, basically, I continue to hold my view that once the direct involvement of the Ministry of Agriculture is not made on a timely basis, this divestment process will fail. I happen to know this for a fact. I'm hoping that through this hearing and through this inquiry, we are able to not just open dialogue, but to create a platform for progressively moving forward to solving these issues, which in my view can be easily solved with the right support mechanisms. We thank you for the opportunity of allowing us a voice on this national platform, and we continue to support the work of the JSC as it relates to this very critical issue.
Thank you, Chair. What I would like to say is that the Ministry of Agriculture is always willing to address the concerns of our stakeholders, inclusive of the farmers, and we have been making strides towards eliminating some of those challenges, such as the late payments, which is a recurring position. We have tried very hard, and we will continue to look at all the other issues with a view to bringing some favorable conclusion to these matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierce. And ADB, thank you for coming. If you would like to say anything before we conclude.
Thank you, Chair. The ADB commits to support the policies of the government of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the development of the agricultural sector. And I say this as chairman. If I'm permitted a comment as somebody who has had some experience in agricultural development, it is clear to me when I look at the scenario that the establishment of a parboiling facility in Trinidad and Tobago and the development of a rice industry of Trinidad and Tobago are not mutually exclusive, in the sense that there is a case for parboiling facility in Trinidad and Tobago, whether or not Trinidad and Tobago decides to support the development of the rice industry. And it would, because of the market that exists for parboiling of rice in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, I want to thank all of you for your very helpful and insightful contributions. And it appears that this concludes our business today. So I would like to declare this meeting now suspended. And in closing, may I thank all of you again, the media, and the viewing and listening audience. Good day.
Thank you.